So what we're going to discuss today is, yes, Ansible. So, cool. What is, before even that, let's talk about something. You remember this terminology, guys. What is IAC then? And why do we need it? Let me give an example. Look at it. What I'm doing, I'm logged into my AWS account and I'm doing this. Okay. Let's say I want to launch 2 servers. Okay. Look at it. How I can launch? Just come over EC2, click on launch instance and give whatever name or tag I want to. Let's say I give an Ansible and I'm choosing operating system as Ubuntu and I'm choosing command 22, which is free tier eligible. Cool. Okay. And instance type as T2 micro, key pair. I am selecting this one. If you don't have, you can always generate a new one, right? And I'm just selecting my existing security group. In case you don't have, please feel free to create a new security group. And that's all I'm saying. I want to launch 2 instances. Okay. And launch instance. That's all. How much amount of time it took me, guys? Or even if you have to launch, and you see, if you even have to launch your instance, how much amount of time it will take? Probably a couple of seconds, right? So this is that easy. Why do we need something like an IC? Replication across the environment. How much amount of time probably we are like considering here? And practically speaking, how many times you really recreate your complete environment? Probably once you set up your production environment. What do we do? Very less likely. So why do we need something called an IC? So let's assume we can track changes. Okay. But at the end of the day, Reju, whoever from the team will be executing the script, they will be executing it manually. Yes or no? So how can we keep a track of it? Sorry, I'm just playing as a devil's advocate, right? Because these all things like, someone will ask you probably in an interview, right? So why do we need IC then? I do have a counter opening on that, Jayashree. So let's say, take a simple example. So you have a very huge product and which is very huge in terms of scale, right? And you set that up. Now, what do you think? How many times probably you will have to recreate the same huge infrastructure all over again in probably the product's lifetime? Or even taking a scenario right now in your organization, whichever project probably you might have worked or working, how many times you or your organization have recreated the same infrastructure for the product? So effort wise, if we understand, it's common, right? I mean, spread it across multiple products. Yes or no? Correct. And even, let's say, for the sake of discussion, if we even assume automation will help, who will do the automation? Some certain resources, some certain team, which will require some certain time, budget, and even resource cost. Correct? So if you compare both of the things, if you're doing manually and if you're introducing automation to do all these things, what do you think? Which will be more costly? Once you set that up, probably that would be handy, right? Again, coming back to the same question, every now and then, do we even modify our infrastructure? Correct. And if we are talking about changing on these scenarios, those would be very little changes, correct? Right? and probably changes like modifying the storage or increasing the storage from X number of GB to Y number of GB, right? Or probably just applying one of the patch, something like that, right? So does that cost justifies? For example, right now we are having a project and multiple projects, and we are hosting on one server. It's very huge server, assume. It also has network setup and whatnot. Traditionally, the way we used to have it. We thought, okay, now let's bring in IAC. Let's implement IAC. Now, IAC can be implemented at multiple layers, correct? For only creating the infrastructure or only provisioning the infrastructure, there might be a different tool. For configuring the infrastructure, there might be a different tool. For templating the infrastructure, there might be a different tool. So let's say we brought all the three types of tools, and now we need people in according to implement that. And definitely we will need different people with different skill sets. So that is an additional cost, right? And those people will take probably 3 or 4 months to implement IAC. So that will be again additional cost in terms of time, right? Get the industry trained. Let's say probably do you think you will get a experience resource, because if you want to implement and your organization is new to the field like IAC, definitely you won't be relying upon first timer who is doing the thing first time, right? You will need senior resources. So time, cost, and all that thing. And even after implementing, let's say it took 3 4 months, after that, once out of the blue moon, customer is asking you to change the storage. Okay. Now, what your resource did? Just made couple of changes in the file, probably from 20 GB to 60 GB, and just rerun the script. Cool. Now, at the end of the year, you may wonder, is our DevOps team ISE, do this much of cost at the end of the year for 3 4 5 resources? Probably we are spending somewhere in millions or even hundred thousands. Does it justifies? Creation is one time. That time probably those 3 4 months they were very productive because they were writing the script from the scratch. Later on, just couple of times in an year, it has been modified. So does it even justifies? Just outsource that work instead of hiring people on my payroll. That would be a minimal cost for me. Yes or no? And just modify that whenever time comes, right? Do I even need any kind of DevOps or IC people in my team or in my organization or rather DevOps department itself? Think like you are talking to your CTO. I am your CTO and you are the one who is responsible for all these things. And you will need budget for that. You will need budget, cost, which you will seek an approval from your management, right? Consider me as a CTO. Huh? So probably my reply would be, I know I read somewhere and I know we are using cloud and I know that you can create something called as an images on this cloud, right? So whatever package you want, just install that on a machine, create an image and keep it handy. So whenever you want a server to be launched with all those predefined packages, instead of using default AMI or default image, you can use your customly created AMI so that you don't invest a lot of time to configure the server all over again. What is stopping you to do that? So why should we invest money into this? Right? So that level of discussion you will have to do, right? So this is something you're gonna hear every now and then. And you need to be very clear on the thought process. Let's talk about this. Why we need it. Now, there might be some sidetrack discussion, just like I brought in one point that okay, you can use AMIs in case of AWS, right? Or in case of probably Azure, you can again there also you have Azure images, right? So the point is these images and everything using what you are creating probably in AWS, you are just using AWS images. Even if you use, or even if you create any custom image, which kind of machines you will be able to launch using that custom image? AWS EC2 only, correct? Will it be compatible with Azure or probably on your local machine VMs or probably somewhere else in GCP with the compute engine? Will it be compatible with other flavors? Absolutely no. And this is exactly how slowly and gradually you are, in a way, you are building your dependency on or with some certain vendor. Now, assume to start with, you won't feel any difference, but assume your organization grows, right? Your organization grows and it grows, and there are almost now 6,000, 8,000 people are there in your organizations. Every day they are launching machines. Every day, like, they are doing like, some certain stuff in some certain capacity, right? Probably creating the infrastructure, configuring the infrastructure. And all of a sudden, what happened? AWS increased, or whatever flavor of cloud you're using, they increased their prices. And now it's very heavy for you, right? So now what you will do? You will have to seek some sort of way out of this, right? So probably you decided, okay, there are other clouds, and okay, we want to just go to Azure cloud now, or even GCP, or even like probably Oracle, right? Why? Because that is more profitable for us. They are not charging like anything, right? Their pricing is cheaper than what we have here. Now tell me, how much amount of time you will need to migrate your complete infrastructure to somewhere else? Probably it might take years. Reason, first you will have to identify. First, you will have to do the gap analysis. Gap analysis in the sense, what all things you are using here in this cloud, and what are the equivalent services, or even what are the equivalent features that you might use to your designated different cloud. That gap analysis itself gonna take some certain time, correct? And once you do the gap analysis, then you will be able to confidently tell that, okay, if we migrate, we will be able to, like, definitely, like, able to operate there, but we will have to do x number of changes in our policies, in our application code, in our probably network and respective aspects, which again further take some certain time, right? And then followed by testing, and then the actual migration will happen. Correct? So now, if you have a very little infrastructure, it may take couple of months and you will be okay. But if you have a huge infrastructure, then probably you are now stuck with your cloud vendor. And how you got into this situation, practically speaking, just because you didn't use vendor neutral or vendor agnostic tools. So this kind of situation, we call it vendor lock-in. So this is one of the reason. Okay. Another reason is, consider a scenario where your infrastructure team or your delivery team, whoever is responsible to provision and to configure infrastructure, think about them. In day-to-day life, what do you think? They are launching like all together different machines. Every time they are launching some new type of machine. Is it? Every day? Absolutely not. How they are launching machines? Because some certain other teams are requesting them infrastructure, and based on the request they are launching it. Yes or no? Correct? And whatever team is requesting them, whatever kind of infrastructure, they are requesting because of their product, right? What do you think now? When it comes to a product or a project, technology, whatever technology you are using to develop that, you are changing it every day. Today we will do development in Java. Tomorrow we will do it in probably .NET. Day after probably we will do in probably JS framework. Is this how it's gonna go? Absolutely no. What happens if you chose a technology? You will stick to that technology, at least for that particular project, right? What does it mean? If I chose Java or .NET, that kind of infrastructure I gonna request to my infrastructure or delivery team, correct? That I need a Java server, I need a .NET server, whatever it is. Yes or no? So your infrastructure team probably landing up doing the same work again and again. Okay. Now operationally think. If they are doing it manually, so let's say in your team, Pramod is like the experienced infrastructure guy, and he's so experienced. If you ask him to create a server, probably it will just take 5 minutes for him to fully create a server by installing all the packages and everything else, right? Because he's experienced, he has worked so many times in the same scenario. He can just do that even while sleeping. All right, but at the other hand, let's assume uh, Hina is new to infrastructure team, right? And a ticket got assigned to Hina that, okay, create a Java server. Do you really think, as she's new to infrastructure team, do you really think it gonna take same amount of time for Hina or for anyone else? No, right? And as it is manual process, do you guarantee there will be no chances of any error? Everything would be perfect every time. Is it? No, because manual processes are always error prone, right? So operationally, it may create chaos, and it does. So now, how do we handle with this scenario? So to help team, what Promote did, Promote wrote down some certain script. Okay, Promote wrote down some certain script. So it Pramod wrote down this script using, let's assume, anything in any X technology. It might be shell script, it might be CDK, anything, right? He wrote down a script. And what he wrote down in this script, so whenever you will run this script, it will create a server. Okay? It will create a server which will have some certain OS, which will have Java, some certain specific version of Java installed on it, and all the other things which are requested. So now every time a ticket comes that, okay, we need a Java server. Okay, whoever works on that ticket, what they all need to do, just run the script all over again. Yes or no? Correct? And it will create the desired server within no time. Now tell me one thing. As it is just a script, as it is just a script, do you think someone has to probably create a server manually? No. And as it is automatically gonna, execute, do you think there will be any chances for any kind of error? No. Yeah. Now, in this scenario, practically speaking, your Java server, how you are maintaining that as the script only, correct? This is what we say infrastructure as a code. Understood? This is exactly what we say infrastructure as a code. Okay. Now, if you can write a piece of code for the infrastructure, can't you write a piece of code probably to configure the infrastructure as well? Right now, this script is creating a server. Can't you write a piece of code for configuring the existing infrastructure as well? You can, correct? Can't you write a piece of code to create a network as well? Can't you write to provision your piece of code to, to provision a storage as well? Or probably to create a policy as well? So you can write down your piece of code absolutely for anything in terms of infrastructure. Correct? So nowadays, practically speaking, it's no longer only infrastructure as a code. Practically speaking, it is X as a code, meaning anything as a code. Network as a code, infrastructure as a code, database as a code, policy as a code, storage as a code, whatever you want. So now this IAC at a high level has three different categories. So first category is what? So first category is provisioning the infrastructure. Okay. Provisioning the infrastructure. Provisioning means what? Creating the infrastructure. Okay. And what kind of tools we have here in provisioning? So probably Terraform, right? Which helps you to create an infrastructure. Cloud formation is there. ARM is there, right? These kind of tools and technologies which falls under provisioning. Now you have other category. Once you have an infrastructure, what you can do with it? Probably you can configure it, right? So another is configuration tools, right? So what kind of configuration category and what kind of tools falls under configuration category? Probably Chef, Opate, SaltStack, right? These kind of things. Okay. Now, some certain organizations may have a different stack altogether, technology stack altogether, right? And for that, they do not want a different set of configuration tool and different set of provisioning tool. What they want one tool which will do provisioning as well as configuration for them, right? Provisioning as well as configuration for them. Okay. And what kind of tools we have here under this category? And what we call this category? So this category, we call it templating the infrastructure. Okay. Where you not only provision it, but you also configure at the same time. Okay. And what kind of tools involved in templating? Probably Docker, Packer, right? So these kind of tools are involved in templating. Understand now, IEC? So now let's look at this configuration category first. Okay. So what is this configuration category? Cool. So if you have your existing infrastructure, it might be anywhere. It might be on cloud. It might be on premises. And if you want to configure that infrastructure, then that's where configuration category tools comes into picture. Okay. But this configuration category also has its own subcategories. Okay. This configuration category also has own subset of categories. Now, what are those categories? So, configuration category at a very high level contains two categories. Okay. And what are those? So, first is agent based tools, and another is agentless tools. Okay. Now, what is this agent based and agentless? Let's understand. So, first understand agent. What are agent based tools and or basically how they work? Now, understand. Um, every one of you is working somewhere. You must have some sort of desktop or laptop, some certain machine from your organization with you, correct? Yes or no? Have you ever observed in your machine, you must have some certain antivirus or some certain agent running 24/7, correct? As soon as you start your machine, that agent start running, correct? And just like in your machine it is running just like that. It will be running for every employee in your organization, correct? What this particular stuff does, it will basically ensure that all the security policies are effective and applied on all the machines which are part of your organization network, correct? And you are actually doing, I mean, you are not crossing the organization's employees, correct? Something like that. Or you're not crossing organization policies, right? You're not you're not allowed to probably visit social media sites. So if you try to open, it will block it, right? So whatever policies your organization may have, they are just that this agent is just making sure that those are in effect, right? Yes or no? Now, this this agent in your organization, you may have 100, 200,000, 10,000 employees. Someone must be taking care of this agent, yes or no? That it has the latest update, your machine is scanned, and something like this. Some support team must be responsible to take care of this. What ho- what do you think? How they are taking care of it? They are connecting to you. I mean, every employee's machine, they're taking remote session or connecting to you and applying the updates, and or every employee they're doing like that. No. So how they're doing it? So probably they might have some certain centralized server, correct? They might have some certain centralized server. And what they do, they are just going ahead and connecting to this server, right? Now this agent has a nature. What is the nature? It knows by default. It knows where the server is and how to connect to that server. Just like your agent will know, all other agents which has been installed on every machine, every agent will know where is that server, centralized server, and how to connect to it, right? And what these guys are doing now, the support guys, these guys are just issuing the instructions to this centralized server, something like this. Okay, scan the machine, right? Or probably install updates, whatever instructions they want. And now, whenever any agent will connect to this server and will ask, "Hey server, do you have any commands for us? Do you want us to do something?" Okay. If there are any instructions, this server will say, "Yes, I do have an instruction for you. Scan the machine and install the updates." Okay. Now what this agent will do? Okay, scan the machine. It will start scanning and it will submit the update to the server. Okay, I scanned the machine and here are the results. Cool. Install updates. Okay, it will download the update from server. It will install it and it will submit the result again back to server. Now, just like the agent which is installed on your machine, just like that, every other agent will behave like this only. Correct? And at the end of the day, all these people, what they will do, they will just log into server and they will just say, okay, these many machines are there. And okay, machine has been scanned and there are no malicious things. Okay, good. Install updates. Oh, okay, updates have been installed. They will just see the result on this centralized server. Yes or no? Something like that must have been happening. Correct? So in this particular scenario, what do you think? Who is doing the heavy lifting? Server, your support team, or agent? What your server is doing? Your server is just issuing the instructions. Correct? Basically, agent is doing the heavy lifting. Agent is connecting to server. Agent is going ahead and scanning the machine, executing whatever stuff needs to be executed on local machine. Agent is submitting the result and everything, right? So agent is doing the heavy lifting. Correct? This type of architecture where agent is doing the heavy lifting, that's kind of architecture we say agent based tools or agent based technologies. What are the example? Examples are chef, of it. Okay. Now, assume this. So let's say this agent. Okay, understood. Agent-based technologies are clear. What are they? Okay. Now, assume this agent. It will be running 24 by 7, 365 days on your machine. And it might be even heavy in terms of nature. I mean, if it is running 24 by 7, 365 days, it will require some certain compute resources to run all the time. Yes or no? Correct? And from where it will eat up the resources? From your machine only. Correct? It will require RAM, it will require like something. From where it will take up these resources? From your machine only. Yes or no? Correct? So in this scenario, we are okay with that to share the resources. Why? Because we are just talking about on-prem infrastructure. It's just a laptop. I'm only using it, so I'm okay with it. Cool. And even if it is running slow, you will go and you will just raise a request to your organization to increase resources, and it will be done because that is one-time cost, right? But consider the same scenario probably over a cloud. Now, do you think it is acceptable for you that apart from your application, there are some certain resource heavy processes are running on your production servers? Is it okay with you? Absolutely no. And even if you want to, if you increase your type of instance, or if you increase infrastructure over a cloud, will it be one time cost? Just like we had in this scenario? Absolutely no. It will be a recurring cost, correct? Every month you will have to pay that cost, increased cost, correct? Cool. So, in real life, to address this problem, people came up with another solution. And what is that? Agentless. Okay, understood. And what is that? That's what is our Ansible. Okay, that's what our Ansible is. Now, let's proceed. So, let's say, how is this Ansible working if it is agentless? Okay, so understand how it works now. So, now I would be introducing you couple of new terminologies. Please understand that. Okay, now first thing, assume, I mean, if you want to use Ansible or any tool, you will have to install that tool somewhere. I mean, somewhere in the sense, on some certain machine, you will have to install in according to use it. Correct? Right? So, wherever you will install Ansible, that machine, what we call that machine? We call it Ansible controller. Okay? Guys, please understand, every tool will have its own vocabulary. Okay? And you should know it. Okay? So, the machine, wherever you will install Ansible, what you will call that machine? Ansible controller. Cool. Now, understand. Let's say we install that Ansible controller. Now, what you want Ansible to configure? Servers, correct? And which servers we are referring to? Our application servers only? Yes or no? Might be web servers, it might be database servers, file servers, whatever real life infrastructure you will have, you will want Ansible to configure that, correct? So, whatever servers you have, it might be your web server, okay, database server, whatever it is, right? So, whatever servers Ansible will be taking care of, okay, what we call them in Ansible's vocabulary, we will call them node, okay, or nodes. All right. So this is node 1, node 2, something like this. We'll call them. Is it clear? Now, in terms of installing Ansible, Ansible comes into two flavor: community, I mean free, open source, and another is paid version. Okay. Long back, like 6 years, 7 years back, Ansible was completely open source, but Red Hat took it over and Red Hat made Ansible. Red Hat came up with another version of Ansible, which is managed one. Meaning what? You don't have to install Ansible and configure it manually. No. By default, Red Hat will give you a solution, a machine, access to machine or a cloud version of that, and where Ansible would be installed by default. And Red Hat will take care of the maintenance and everything. That version of Ansible, we call it Ansible Tower, which is paid. Okay. But in terms of features or capabilities, there is no difference. Okay. Whatever you can do with open source Ansible, you can do the same stuff with Tower as well, or vice versa. All right. Now, in this Ansible has been developed using Python. Okay. Meaning what? If you want to install Ansible, what you will have to do first thing? Install Python. Exactly. So that's a prerequisite for Ansible. Okay. And then you will install Ansible. Okay. Now for nodes, do we need to install Ansible there as well? No. We don't need to install Ansible on nodes. So what we will have to do, we will just have to install Python on the nodes. That's all. And why is that? We'll talk about it later. Okay. But on nodes, what is the prerequisite? Installing Python only. Okay. Now, so let's talk about this. Let's say if you want to install some certain library, or let's say you want to install Apache or something like that, how you will install, guys? How you will configure your machine if you have to configure it manually? So practically, you will execute some certain commands, isn't it? Right? That's how you will configure it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
At the end of the day. Okay. Now, what Ansible says, you don't go and you don't, you know, manually configure whatever nodes you want to configure. Okay. What you do, you just go ahead and you just write down whatever you want to configure in a file. Just give me your instructions, but give me in a file. Okay. So whatever instructions or whatever configuration you want Ansib- Ansible to do, write them down in a file. Okay. But here's the problem. Problem is what? If I have to write down the instructions, I will be writing down those instructions in my own way. Correct? If probably Hina wants to write down the instructions, she may write down in her own way, right? Shubham will probably write down the instructions in his own way. Just like that, everyone will write down instruction differently. Now, what do you think? Will Ansible be able to understand that then? No. So what Ansible says, look, if you want to write down instructions, write them down using YAML only. Why? To standardize it, right? Okay. Now, that's why we will use YAML to write down the instructions. Okay. Now, wherever we wrote down these instructions, what we call that file? We call this file as Playbook, where we have written whatever needs to be done. Okay. And now, okay, Ansible will use this file to configure your infrastructure. Cool. But guys, your web servers, database servers, you may have different infrastructure. And by now, you understand, if you want to connect to a machine, you will need some certain authentication mechanism. Yes or no? It might be username, password, it might be key-based authentication, it might be keyless authentication. But you will require at least what is the URL or IP of that machine, right? What's the username and what's the authentication mechanism? Yes or no? Correct? Anyone
yeah.
who wants to connect, you will need this information. Do you think Ansible will have that information? No. So how Ansible gonna connect? So that's exactly why what we do, we go ahead and we provide this information to Ansible. Okay. And what information we are referring to? Which all machines we have, which we want Ansible to manage, and how to connect to those machines. Clear? How to connect to those machines. Okay. And we call this file as Ansible inventory or simply inventory. And who will provide this information? We will provide this information. Got it? How this will work? Once we wrote down the playbook, we will ask Ansible to execute that playbook wherever we want, right? On node 1, node 2, or on all the machines, right? Now, Ansible will use this Ansible inventory to identify connection information, okay? And it will connect to that machine, execute whatever it has to execute, and break the connection after execution. So practically speaking, your Ansible will be connecting to your machines only for execution purpose, and it will break the connection. So your machine will also get configured, but at the same time, now compared to agent-based technologies, do you have any extra processes or any compute or resource heavy things running on your servers apart from your product? No. But at the same time, you also achieved your purpose, configuring the machine with the desired, like, with this or something. Got it? How this agentless technology work now? Basically Ansible. Perfect. Cool. So now let's go ahead and let's install Ansible. Now look at it. I launched 2 machines. I named one machine as Ansible controller because that's where I will be installing the Ansible. Now you understand why I named it, right? But just by naming this machine, I mean, does it become Ansible controller actually? No, right? We'll have to configure and we'll have to install Ansible, right? So the official Ansible website is ansible.com. Okay. Here is the Ansible's official website. Okay. And you can refer to this documentation. Okay. And this is the documentation. And here you can say, right, understand the fundamentals if you want, installing Ansible, how you can install it, right? Something like this. Okay. Here it is. So here's the Ansible documentation. I'm just sharing the link in the chat window. Okay. Cool. And now let's say we want to install. Okay. Where we want to install Ansible. Look at it. In my case, where we want to install Ansible, guys, on which operating system? Ubuntu. Correct? Right? So let's get the instructions. You see? Okay. Installing Ansible and installing Ansible on specific operating system, right? So I will open up this link, install Ansible on specific operating system, right? So you see, installing Ansible on Fedora, OpenSUSE, APL, Ubuntu, Debian, Windows, wherever you want, right? So I will choose installing Ansible on Ubuntu. And here are the instructions. Got it?